Well, hey everybody. It is 10:45 Eastern Standard Time, 7:45 in the Pacific region. And you know the breakdowns for the rest of those time zones. All right. Hey. So, I am sitting here right now in my dad's old man cave. Most people, their man cave is in the basement or the garage. His is one of our old bedrooms. So I'm happy to show off some of his guitars. That was a beautiful white Stratocaster you just saw. Let's check this out. Let's start with the real simple tour. Let's disconnect from power, turn it around. All right. This beautiful amp. It's a Gibson. Say that since I was little. So for like the gearheads, this is the stuff to really obsess over. Dude had more guitar pedals than I've had hot meals in 2019. All right. Here's the collection. I'm not going to go through every single one of them because that's probably a little excessive. But we're going to look at this one, and we're going to look at this one. And I think we might start with this guy. So for those of you tuning in without any context, my father had a 6-month battle with cancer, which he won, but not necessarily an earthly victory. He left this world last Sunday at 9:02 p.m. And he left behind a lot of stuff. He left behind a great legacy. And I'll talk more about that in future videos. But while I'm here in his house, where he had the blessing of being when it was his time to drop the body, figured it was a good opportunity to show off some of this stuff and talk about the influence he had on me and the role music played in our relationship. And yeah, maybe I'll show off a few of my tricks, and I don't know, we'll see. So, it's actually a little stuffy in here, even though it's all of 15 degrees outside. 15 degrees. It's a good 75 degrees in the house. Alright. Oh, someone asked me to burn this shirt. I'm not going to, but while in a red state, I was asked to burn this Black Lives Matter shirt. I'm not going to. Let's start with this guy. So my dad had 2 acoustics. There's a Dan Electro 12-string somewhere in there. Maybe I will bust that one out. I do love a good 12-string. I hope I can be heard. I don't think I have chat visible on this. 2 acoustics, a bass, 12-string, a whole bunch of different electrics, a keyboard, and he didn't even play piano all that much. Alright, so let's start with this guy. I feel like he is frowning on me for this one. Wrong way. Okay. Yeah. I looked at this one the other night. My old man got this one of his last Christmases before he had kids. So this is sort of like his second born. This is a Japanese-made guitar by Electra. It's called the Electra Phoenix. I'm not sure what year he got this, sometime in the early 80s. And I apologize for not being in the best lighting. For some reason, my parents don't have that many spotlights in their house. So, let's get this strapped in, tuned up. probably about as exciting as watching a pot of water boil, but keeps me off the streets. And I think it beats the hell out of a Big Bang Theory rerun. Let's see what's in here. And I visited the White House pin, among other things. My dad was a king collector of various bric-a-brac, so it's kind of neat to see. He's got like a Donald Duck pin on his guitar. All right, there's the pick. Let's see if we're in tune. Not even close. Look at this, I've already wasted 6.5 minutes of your time and I haven't played a lick yet. All right. Fun fact about me. Been a drummer for 22 years, which means I'm not a great musician. And that also means I view the guitar as much as a stringed instrument as I do a percussion instrument. I really hope the audio's okay. If I'm mumbling and warbling, I do apologize. D, that's in tune. G. Alright, if you are really good at perfect pitch, you'll know that this is the open G tuning. The open G tuning is a blues tuning used by Keith Richards, among others. Let's see. Not bad. I haven't played in a while either. Through the course of my dad's sickness, I was pretty depressed. I didn't write, wasn't playing much music. I actually stopped teaching music during that time. So this is my first time playing in months. I'm a bit rusty. But yeah, this is the Electro Phoenix. Plugged in, I'm sure it's a lot of fun. There's 2 folks sleeping in the house. Don't want to wake anyone up. So this is a really old house, 1912. It's a beautiful home. A lot of noise though, noise carries. It's a creaky old house. So I like the, toss this. I like the open G tuning. I think it gives you a little more freedom. some kind of way out of here, said the Joker to the thief. There's too much confusion, I can't get no relief. Businessmen that drink my wine, plowmen dig my earth. I don't know the words. No reason to get excited, the thief he kindly spoke. There are many here among us who feel that life is but a joke. But you and I, we've been through that, and this is not our fate. So let us not talk falsely now, I was getting late. All along the watchtower, princes kept the view, while other maidens came and went, barefoot servants too. Outside in the cold distance, a wild did growl. Two riders were approaching, the wind began to howl. Not my worst, not my best. Somewhere downstairs in a photo album is my dad opening this thing on Christmas morning. It's beautiful. I'm not sure what makes these things unique and special. I've read a few things on some guitar forums that these things were pretty special in their time. I don't know much about it. I'm unfortunately only a player, not a historian on guitars. So I'm gonna tuck this away while you go ahead, open a beer, pack a bowl, whatever you do. I'm in a state where I can't. So I've got a Coors awaiting me. How's that for product placement? All right, let's get this bad boy tucked away. So another reason I love the open G tuning, like I said, it takes a little bit of thinking out of it for me. Which, I don't know, is that the point of playing music, or is that the exact opposite of what it's supposed to make you do? I don't know. What I do know is that it does also make it incredibly easy to do slide guitar, and that is perhaps my favorite. One of my favorite things to do. All right, this is the way it goes. I can see now we never were allowed to touch these things. What a beautiful case too. Look at that lining. It's this color scheme is my old man in a nutshell. Bright orange velvet. That's him. All right, let's stash this. Cheers. All right. Here comes the next one. It's a Fender Mustang. He was into these like 20 years before Nirvana. Who I love, he was not a fan. In fact, he was pretty bitter about Kurt Cobain making the Mustang famous because they were nice, budget, entry-level Fenders. And then after Nevermind came out, these things skyrocketed in price. And, this is my dad's Excalibur. All right, let's close this bad boy up. Yeah, Donald Duck on one strap, Goofy on the other. I don't know if I've posted too many photos of the old man, but he did bear a passing resemblance to Goofy. He had gappy incisors. My whole life, he had a mullet, which kind of looked like like Goofy's ears, which also looked like payas. And I don't know, his nose kind of looked like a snout. And as someone who inherited that nose, I think I'm allowed to make fun of it. Ooh. I sense this is a little smaller. Is it? I think it might be. All right. Generally what I do when I retune a guitar from E into open G is I pop the top string off, but out of respect for the departed, I will keep it intact. Alright, so if you're ever retuning your axe, it's G, G, again, I apologize if this is curing your insomnia. Definitely know, moving forward, I'm going to do more live streams, talking about music, religion, maybe even play songs, talk politics. He took really good care of these things. Tuning the high strings always sounds to me like someone's playing on a sitar. I'd love one of those, but an electric one. Alright, that sounds like an open G strum. Wow, 20 minutes already. Huh. Should I tease you a little bit and talk more before I start playing? I think I will. Alright, so I want to show off some more stuff. This, see what that is? It's the lyric book for Tommy by The Who. This was one of my dad's favorite albums, and subsequently one of mine. He played it for me at a pretty formative age. It's the libretto to the rock opera, along with lyrics. And right here is a thing advertising the rehearsal dinner for my parents' wedding, July 1977. It's an antique. But yeah, Tommy is one of my favorite albums, and I will echo what my dad told me in life. If you ever want to learn how to play the rhythm guitar, Tommy is the album to do it with. Of course, I'm not going to play anything from that. I don't have the skills. Shit, what should I play? Little Red Rooster, those of you who are old blues fans. It's a great guitar. This is a guitar synthesizer, this little pickup thing here, made by the Roland Company. And this little sucker, you plug it into your guitar, and it can make your guitar sound like not a guitar. Also got a little too little headroom. That's better. What else can I show off for you? I've never played this before. I've never played these guitars. Growing up, it was verboten to touch these things. It was a serious deal. We would go through his records, and that was a no-no. Guitars were forbidden. It wasn't until I was an adult that I actually got to play one of them. He was just protective of his things. And I get it. I get like that too. And I mean, if I had a guitar like this, I would do everything I could to keep it out of my hands. Alright. It's in very good shape, as you can see. I don't know the year. What a beautiful finish. I think when he first got it, I believe he said it had a either seafoam green or Lake Placid blue. Likely seafoam green, as I believe he got this in the 70s. But he stripped the finish off of it, got it down to this beautiful blonde wood. Not sure what it's made from. And this looks like it's 3/4 scale. It's not full size. Alright. How about I do two more songs? and then I'll show off some books. Ooh, the storm is threatening my very life today. If I don't get some shelter, ooh yeah, I'm gonna fade away. Whoa, children, just a shot away. Ooh, the fire is sweeping my very street today. Burns like a red cold carpet, black hole lost its way. Whoa, children, it's just a shot away. Whoa, just a shot away. Ooh, see the fire is sweeping my very street today. Give me shelter, or I'm gonna fade away. I tell you love, sisters, just a kiss away, just a kiss away, just a kiss away, just a kiss away, just a kiss away. Funkadelic, how about some Funkadelic? Again, I'm out of practice, my wrist is in bad shape. What am I bitching about? How many other people are up risking humiliation doing this online? Alright, this is a Funkadelic tune. 2 chords. Only 2 chords. I might throw in a G here and there. I once had life forever. Life had me. I was one among many, or at least I seemed to be. But I read an old quotation in a book just yesterday. It says, gonna reap just what you sow. The debts you make, you'll have to pay. Can you get to that? I wanna know if you can get to that. Can you get? Wanna know if you can get to that? I recollected with mixed emotions of the good times we used to have. You was making preparations for the kind of separations, and you blew everything you had. Then you waste your life on credit, and your loving days are done. Checks you sign with loving kisses, later come back signed insufficient funds. Yo, get to that. I wanna know if you can get to that. Like that one a lot. Alright. This was cool. Glad I got to show these off to you. I want to go through some songbooks too. Not playing a whole bunch. I'm going to tuck this away. There's a bunch of CDs right behind me. All sorts of cool stuff. So speaking of Tommy, I'm not sure if, in this condition it's probably not worth much, but check out this old Tommy songbook. Nice old vintage pictures of the band. Look at that color. Little thing about their story. Some really trippy art in the sleeve to this album. You know, stuff about perception, reality. There's an overwhelming spirituality to this record. In fact, once I get back to Portland, I'm going to be putting the finishing touches on a manuscript entitled Finding God in the Devil's Music. And the chapter I wrote is about Tommy and the influence of an Indian mystic named Meher Baba. Big influence on Pete Townsend. I co-edited the book and wrote one chapter in it. Yeah, this is a great album. And neat little book. It's got the chord boxes and everything. He's got all sorts of cool stuff. Pink Floyd songbooks. Cream. One of my dad's all-time favorite bands. In fact, I think those are the big three right there, I'd say, aside from the Beatles, and maybe even go so far as to say that perhaps even a little more so than the Beatles, he was really into Pink Floyd, The Who, and Cream. Really big fan of like the golden era Kinks as well. Real big on the prog rock. That might be where he and I parted ways musically the most. Like Yes and Genesis, and wasn't too big on Emerson, Lake and Palmer, but like stuff from that ilk. Uriah Heep, 10 Years After, names that you're not going to hear a lot in like these neo-hipster outlets like Pitchfork. They often get overlooked, forgotten, ignored. I think sometimes quite intentionally so. To make room for more reviews of, I don't know, some talentless, overrated asshole like Dylan or Springsteen. But, gee, did I say that out loud? Alright, so that's just me. My dad got this in Puerto Rico. It's a Huiro. He was an Air Force baby, so a lot of traveling, a lot of relocation. It's a fun instrument to play. This and a guitar, instant band. And frankly, that and some luggage to smack on, you don't even need a drum set. So, a lot of good memories in this house, this space. Remembering my dad and stuff. In fact, why don't we continue our journey? Let's check out the record collection. All right, so I'm on the second floor. I need to go down a floor and then down to the basement. Un momentito. Yep, gotta love that dead air space. An empty set. A host who walks off camera. Probably barely audible this whole time. Not saying much. With my one live stream watcher. Who for all I know has been commenting away about my complete lack of talent. But, oh well. It gets cold in this house when it's 15 degrees outside. Alright, put the slide away, put my beads back on. Certainly come back up. Alright. Disconnected from power supply. Let's see how this goes. Alright, I'm going to walk through a very dark and quiet house, so bear with me for about 10 seconds or so. Probably closer to 30. And there's the man of the hour himself with my lovely mother. I believe that picture was taken in 2005. 14 years ago. Alright, so we're on our way down to the basement. I don't know how many of you watching, again, all one of you, I'm not sure how many of you grew up in an old house. But this house has an unfinished basement. That is to say, it's contained, it has 4 walls and a floor, but it is not quite as hospitable, perhaps, as the average bedroom. Man, dark and creepy. And to be alone at night down here. So I actually spent a summer sleeping down here in 2002. It's a whole ritual turning all these lights on, and then I will happily show off all of this assorted bric-a-brac from my dad's workspace. Let me grab my beer, which I left over on this pool table. Again, I appreciate your patience for bearing with me. And boom. Hey, me again. I spent a lot of time in this basement as a kid. For a while, it creeped me the hell out. And rightfully so. I was 10 when we moved into this house. And, was I 10? I was 9 going on 10. So when you're 9 years old, like think about, like, if you've seen the movie Home Alone, Kevin is frightened to death of the furnace in his basement. I was the same way with this basement because it's dark, it's creepy. When you're a certain height and also just a certain age, you don't really know where all the light switches are, and you don't have like that comfort of being like, oh, uh, there's no monsters down here and no serial killers and certainly no vampires. Um, I shot a movie down here once when I was in high school. It was a goofy little thing, heavily inspired by Reservoir Dogs and like Robert Rodriguez movies. And this was the hangout for the main characters. Like, since all gangsters hang out in bars and plan their bank robberies in bars, this was the several freight deliveries ago. Um, this could pass as a basement bar. And if there's ever a transfer of ownership of this house, might be something for the next owner to look into getting a permit for, getting a liquor license and making this an actual bar. So, summer of 2002, my great-grandmother, my dad's granny, his mom's mom, stayed with us. She slept in my old room, and this was my space for the summer. It was a good time. It was also the summer my brother graduated high school. Big transition time. There's a lot of my dad's energy down here. Upstairs, it's a lot of decorations that both he and my mom agreed on. And so, like I said, a lot of his stuff is down here. And it's pharmaceutical bric-a-brac, it's pop culture stuff, things that sort of satisfied his nostalgia for yesteryear. Not that he was a regressivist by any means, but like a Hopalong Cassidy tin poster, that kind of stuff. Now, my dad was super cool. I can't say that enough. He taught me all kinds of cool shit. And, God, all our toys are still down here. Any Ghostbusters fans? Anyone recognize that? Christmas 1989, baby. All right. So let's just cop a squat right down here, mounted up against some old cassette tapes. I'll let you know now, if I suddenly get up and run off, it's because I saw a mouse. Fingers crossed. Alright, so again, I apologize for the piss poor lighting. We'll work with it. When I was young, like I said, the guitars, absolutely, verboten. They were the holiest of holies. But more accessible, and eventually the old man had to compromise, were his records. I looked through the records as a 3-year-old, just this dopey little kid with a big head, going through these available records. And why not? They're big, they're beautiful, they've got pictures on them. And for me, as a little boy who watched the Beatles in their movies, I grew up watching Help, Yellow Submarine, John Lennon's Imagine, not Imagine John Lennon, the documentary, a film John and Yoko made in '71 called Imagine. So like these guys were heroes to me, and still are. So let's see. All right, I'm gonna start with like low-hanging fruit. Another one of my dad's favorites, and really when you're talking classic rock, when you're talking psychedelic rock, when you're talking the guitar, the conversation goes one way for most people, and it is this. Aside from Jimi Hendrix, Who is your favorite? So, I'm sure many of you know this album quite well. Axis Bold as Love by Jimi Hendrix. He was signed to a record label in England. I think it was Track Records. Look at that. So we'll talk a little more about the theological significance of this imagery in a minute. He asked the record company for a record or an album cover that showcased Indian culture. And being part native, he meant something different than what he got. But if you say Indian to someone from the UK, that's what they're going to assume. Okay. Got another one. Again, I apologize if this is as interesting as a trip to Pittsburgh, but maybe it is more for me than it is the viewing public. But I also like to talk music. All right, that's 3. Don't want to go too far. I don't want to get like 20 out. Okay, here's one more. I, again, greatly appreciate your patience. My one viewer who has stayed throughout this live stream, thank you. Makes me feel like I'm not alone. Let's see. Oh yeah. Any Pink Floyd fans out there? We're going to talk about Pink Floyd. See, right around that corner is much better lighting. What was I thinking, not setting up 3-point lighting throughout this big old drafty house? Silly me. Pink Floyd. Now what can I say? There's a band. You know what? You guys know the Beatles. I'm not going to get any Beatles records out because that's dumb. Y'all know the Beatles. Does he have any good Lennon albums? No, he just has the one. My dad was not a John Lennon fan. I'm not seeing too many John Lennon records here. Alright. Again, thank you for your patience. Let's go sit in better lighting. It's like an episode of Mr. Rogers hosted by a pothead. All I need is that incidental music. Still alive. All I need is that incidental music and it'll get a lot less boring. There's no place to sit, is there? Well, here. What about mounting the bastard? All right. Be right back. Alright, so my dad's got some cool records, and I'm going to show off a couple. Not the whole collection, because he had crates. Crates. There's like 6 different crates, and I'd say there's dozens of records in each of them. I have no idea what that collection would cost. They're in pretty good condition. Let's start with Pink Floyd. Now, Pink Floyd is known for many classic albums. The Wall, Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, I think, is pretty much an indisputed classic as well. But those other albums are the ones that I like the best, and they're actually also my dad's favorite as well. My favorite era of their career is from the first album up through Dark Side of the Moon. And this compilation is not one you will find in stores today. Not on CD anyhow. And if you do see it on vinyl, I'm thinking you're not going to get this for cheap. It's Dutch. Seeing there, it was printed in Haarlem with 2 A's. So I think it is pronounced Haarlem instead of Harlem. These things matter. And it showcases, you know, the other Pink Floyd albums that are available. Of interest, though, is the content. There are B-sides, non-album tracks, things that were very hard to track down. In fact, Candy and a Currant Bun. And It Would Be So Nice. I think also those first 2 on side 2 were not obtainable on album, stateside. So, my dad hunted this down, which has songs that are on other albums, for the few tunes that he didn't have elsewhere. Alright, so to keep going down the Pink Floyd route. Alright, content warning, there's going to be some titties on this cover. Even though 51% of the global population has them. Another Pink Floyd album. This one, a compilation, again. A Nice Pair. It's a pretty cool sleeve. Them in their football uniforms. A fork sticking out of the grass. Alright. Believe it or not, that is not an R. Crumb drawing. That is a frog popping out of someone's mouth. It's pretty gross. There's that guy. Oh, standing next to what I think is a pot plant. Is it? Sign of things to come. There's also that guy. Glasses. It's an interesting sleeve. Oh, more tits. And she's got a bird coming out of her puss. Alright, so this is a double album containing Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Pink Floyd's first album, where Syd Barrett was their primary songwriter, and the second disc is A Saucer Full of Secrets, the band's second album. Alright, some more pictures of these dudes. They were a strange-looking band, and subsequently not photographed all that much, except for like some limited photo sessions. They were rarely featured in their album sleeves for a while. That's from the, I think that's from the Point Me at the Sky photo shoot, and if not, I don't remember. Cool. And if I remember correctly, this pressing erroneously includes a live version of Astronomy Domine as featured on the Uma Guma record. So, cool compilation. We're already nearly an hour. Well, that's cool. Let's get you propped up a little bit. Alright, better than nothing. Okay, let's talk a little bit about one of my dad's favorite album sleeves of all time. I humbly disagree with him, but, you know, at least we're tied for the same band. For me, it's Cream Disraeli Gears, which is beautiful, colorful, psychedelic. Whoops. This is not my best video. Damn it. Well, shit. How's my one viewer holding up? You doing all right? Back to shit lighting, I guess. All right. Look at this. Wheels of Fire by the Cream. Another double album. Studio and live combined. Kind of a precursor to so many classic rock albums from the 70s. There's a Kinks album I can think of that has that distinction. Oh, this is better. Just sliding all around the floor. This is not interesting television, is it? So, I used to think this was not the most interesting cover because it's monochromatic. If you look closely at it, there's all kinds of neat details going on. This is a neat album. Those of you who might know Cream, you might know the song White Room. That's the opening track on this. There's a lot of cool stuff going on this record. And that Mylar, look at that glare. This is, who's that guy who did the Star Trek reboot? Was it J.J. Abrams? Look at that lens flare. It's like I'm in Star Trek. Alright, let's open this up. What's in here? Whoa. Cool. This is a really good album. White Room, I have sung at karaoke. Passing the Time is a great song as well. Great album. I think we can get into more substantial discussion now. Starting with, well, one band that my dad stumped for quite a bit, and it certainly did rub off on me, was Cheap Trick. Now, they weren't revolutionaries like the Beatles or the Clash, nor did they purport to be. That I think is part of their magic, is they weren't setting out to turn the world on its ear. They just wanted to make good music. Music that made you feel good, music you could hang out and party to, music you could drink to. Although I will admit, their first album has a lot going on lyrically. There's some really messed up stuff on it, sociologically speaking. This is one of my favorite album sleeves. Despite not being the biggest fan of law enforcement, the Dream Police album by Cheap Trick. As you can see, they're in these like creepy cop uniforms. Looks like they're in some otherworldly place like heaven. There's a disembodied mannequin. It's a strange place. When you're little and you look at an album sleeve like this, it changes your perception of things. You wonder, what's the story behind this photo? Why is this the album cover? Were they really, did they really dress up like this? No, this was more what they looked like on stage. It's not even a concept album. And then, of course, this. This is a great album. Uh, if you're wanting to just learn how to play the drums and play steady, rock solid, 4/4 time playing, you could do a lot worse than learning how to play the drums via Cheap Trick. This is their drummer. His real name is Brad Carlson, but you may know him better by his stage name, Bun E. Carlos. Fantastic drummer. He's actually the youngest guy in the band, despite looking like he did the band's taxes. A wonderful player, and deceptively simple, his playing. Takes a lot of restraint to play the way he plays, and on top of that, he can do fills like a mofo. If you ever listen to the At Budokan live record, their version of Ain't That a Shame by Fats Domino, it opens with a 1.5-minute long drum intro. There's a lot of neat stuff going on in there. Cool fills. Really good player. This record, in compact disc form, was the first CD I ever got. This is Through the Past Darkly, Big Hits Volume 2, by this blues outfit from London called the Rolling Stones. Wonder if they're any good. Yeah, so you don't see this often, and in fact, a lot of reissues of this retain a square shape rather than this octagonal stop sign. And this is a cool photo. I've seen outtakes from this photo shoot, and the band were placed in front of a pane of glass, and they threw stuff at it, creating this effect. So yeah. Yeah, so in some of the other photo shoots, you can actually see Keith Richards, throwing a chair at this pane of glass in front of them. Dude was a punk. Is. God bless him. Outlasted my dad. Outlasted a lot of his peers. This is the greatest hits covering their career from 66 to 69, which might not seem like a long period, but listen to this track listing. Paint It Black, Ruby Tuesday, She's a Rainbow, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Mother's Little Helper, Let's Spend the Night Together, Honky Tonk Women, Dandelion, 2,000 Light Years from Home, Have You Seen Your Mother Baby Standing in the Shadow, and Street Fighting Man. Not a bad track listing. The UK version had a different lineup. I don't think the sleeve design was different. Anyone watching this tonight or later, feel free to correct me. Yes. Now we're getting more into the realm of the relevant. My dad was not the biggest Rolling Stones fan. Too many songs about fucking, I think. But he loved the early stuff. Prior to... He enjoyed Sticky Fingers. Thought Exile was a little overrated. He has Goat's Head Soup on vinyl, which I'm pretty sure if you were born in the mid-50s and went to college in the 70s, you were issued a copy of Goat's Head Soup. That's an album that, whether you're a Stones fan or not, if you were alive during the classic rock era, you somehow obtained a copy of Goat's Head Soup by the Rolling Stones. It's not their best album by a long shot. It's their rather sophomoric follow-up to Exile, and they're missing Keith pretty bad. He was awfully strung out during that time. So they're basically Jagger's band at that point, although Mick Taylor did have an uncredited co-write with 100 Years Ago. Wonderful song. It's the second track on that album. Okay, so around the time of my first, I was in first grade, I discovered this band called The Kinks. My dad had a VHS of their music video collection, Come Dancing. It had Come Dancing, Predictable, State of Confusion, Don't Forget to Dance, Do It Again, which is a great, underrated masterpiece by Ray Davies, and a couple of live tracks, Lola, Celluloid Heroes, and a live rendition of You Really Got Me. And as soon as I heard that, You Really Got Me, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. Um, By the way, if anyone watching this is concerned about me doing this, I talked like that long before the alt right started doing that. One of my spiritual masters, Meher Baba, was known to frequently flash "okay" as a sign that it is well. I'm not going to let those fuckwipes co-opt something that I know to be a peaceful expression. This is actually in Hindu culture. This is called a mudra. It's a hand gesture and it symbolizes peace. I'm not going to let those fucks steal that from me. So if you ever see me doing something like this, please understand I am slightly to the right of Che Guevara. I will never join the alt-right, and I would die before I join those ranks. So, just getting that out there. Sometimes a mudra is just a mudra. So, the Kinks blew me away. They had a long career, much like the Stones, although the Stones are still playing. The Kinks stopped recording and releasing stuff in the 90s. But, so I discovered the 80s material, which I thought was fun and catchy, and really it wasn't that old. It was only 10 years old for me to discover it the year I did. You know, Come Dancing and Do It Again, those tunes. And my dad made a tape of early Kinks, and it started with You Really Got Me and went all the way up through the years covered by the Kink Chronicles, which is approximately 70 or 71. The Kinks have a very interesting story. In 1966, 3 years into their career, 2 years after they broke big in America, the American Federation of Musicians banned them from playing in the United States. There's a lot of reasons as to why that possibly happened. First is, these British bands were taking money away from American bands. I'm not saying that as a positive or negative. That was a thing, and it happened. And it pissed off American unions, the musician unions. They couldn't go after the Stones. They couldn't go at, despite their reputation for bad offstage behavior. Like they, in the States, were denied a bathroom at a gas station, and so I think Keith, Bill, and Brian pissed on the side of the gas station and said, "See ya." The Beatles they couldn't go after because they were squeaky clean. But a band like the Kinks, sort of a second-tier British invasion band with brothers in the band, they were known to fight on stage. Well, that there is what we in the business call low-hanging fruit. And I also think Ray Davies like punched out a producer on like Bandstand or Hullabaloo, one of those American music shows. So it was really easy to say like, no, do not pass go, do not come back for 4 years. So they didn't. And during that time, Ray Davies had to refocus his songwriting from pandering to the American market to the cheeseburgers and cars circuit, and instead, as he put it, he said, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have made all those great British albums. He wrote albums specifically tailored for the sensibilities of the British record-buying public. That's what gives us stuff like Something Else by the Kinks, the Village Green Preservation Society, Arthur or the Decline and Fall of the British Empire, one of the finest anti-war albums of the 1960s. It came out like just before Tommy, so it got eclipsed in a big way by another named concept album. Speaking of concept albums, and here we are with the next thing I'm going to show off. This is my favorite Kinks album. It's a deep cut. This one didn't even chart when it came out in 1974. Preservation Act 2. Where's Act 1? My dad didn't have a copy. I had no idea what the hell I was looking at when I was 6. All right, what's this big word? I didn't know what that was. Act 2. Well, I knew that that was like a play or, whatever. Allergies, by the way. I don't stick shit up my nose. This tattered billboard, the colors. What the fuck is with that jacket? What are we looking at here? As if Dream Police weren't weird enough. What is this? And moreover, this is so far removed from the early velvet-suited da-da-da-da-da, and this is also pretty far removed from those somewhat nerdy-looking fellas in those 80s music videos. Very hirsute. They are in costume. And they got 3 chicks hanging out with them. And, I'm no swerf, but I think one can look at these ladies and assume that they are supposed to be, to use the archaic phrase, ladies of ill repute. This is a concept album, and this character is named Flash, and in the libretto, those are his floozies. I don't like that term, but one of them, and I'm not sure who, one of them actually sings lead on a couple songs on this album. Inside is more pictures of the band in their costume. So Ray Davies here is playing, is in costume as Mr. Flash, this cigar-smoking, real estate developing capitalist. Once upon a time in a faraway land lived a villain called Flash. He was such a wicked man. He brutalized the people. He broke arms and crushed hands. He ruled with a fist, then he purchased all the land. Sound familiar? They called it compulsory purchase over in the UK. We call it, what is it, eminent domain? Either way, it's bullshit, and it is a provision that the government can steal your land. So this triple LP concept album rock opera about a village that is taken over by political tumult and turmoil is strange. At the very least, a strange experience. Act 1 of Preservation ended up being the first, and to my knowledge, only Kinks CD my father ever purchased. He got it when we went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on a vacation. This was pre-internet, like before the widespread arrival of the internet, so you kind of did have to go a little out of the way to find albums like Preservation Act 1 or a Frank Zappa album. Who the hell was going to carry Frank Zappa in a small town like Seymour, other than 13th Floor music? You had to, but otherwise, Sam Goody wasn't going to carry it. So, Act 1 is very different than Act 2. Act 1 is a more pastoral depiction of this village before it gets taken over. Then Act 2 is after it gets taken over. The buildings have been demolished. We call it gentrification now because it's sweeter. But musically, Preservation Act 2 is their white album. Musically, they're all over the place, trying out different styles. And when I say all over the place, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean they're trying. They're effectively showing off their chops as musicians capable of comfortably capable of playing in a multitude of musical genres. There's country and western. There's what I would say passed for metal or hard rock in '74. There's some psychedelic stuff on there. There's a couple spoken word tracks. There's songs that sound like they would have been perfectly at home on the Village Green Preservation Society, so more like English pastorals, more just like classic Kinks tunes. It's a wonderful album. And the political point made through it all is this revolution happens, and then the next regime is in fact worse than the one that had been in place. It takes that Who lyric, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, and stretches it out across a 100-minute concept album. It's a beautiful listen. And perhaps at some point with my lovely co-host Miss Alexa, we'll talk about it. Speaking of the Who, here's my boy Pete Townsend. This is his first solo album, a release that came out in '72, called Who Came First. If you look closely, he is hovering over a galaxy of eggs. There's kind of a riff here. Now this album features originals, and it also is directly inspired by Meher Baba, who I will talk a little bit about now. And if you look closely, he's wearing a Meher Baba button on that white jumpsuit of his, which he made famous during the era of Tommy on stage. This is a cool album. These are pictures of Meher Baba. His birth name was Merwan Shahriar Irani. He was born into a Zoroastrian family. For those of you not familiar, Zoroastrianism is a monotheistic religion as old as Hinduism, older than Judaism. For people who want proof that the Abrahamic religions are not 100% honest, look into Zoroastrianism. There's a lot of plagiarism from that faith community on the part of other religious organizations and faith traditions that borrow liberally from the dogma of Zoroaster, from the idea of Ahura Mazda and Aingra Mainyu, of good versus evil, of dualism as opposed to monism. Basically, Zoroastrianism was the first Western religion, and if you study it closely, you will see many ideas that were borrowed, recycled, revived, resurrected, reinterpreted, reassessed in Judaic and Christian thought. But Meher Baba was born to a Zoroastrian family in India, which is a Hindu majority country, although there are also Jains, Buddhists, Sikhs, Jews, Muslims. Did I say Muslims? There's a multitude of faith traditions present in the Indian subcontinent. Growing up, the man who became Meher Baba encountered 5 different perfect spiritual masters, including my personal savior, Sai Baba of Shirdi. They only met once, but it was a very important meeting for him. He recognized the oneness of faith, the unity of religion. Now, Meher Baba went a couple steps further and claimed he was God incarnate, that he was the avatar of the age, which has been said about several other 20th century figures, so take that with a grain of salt. That said, there is nothing malevolent in the teachings of Meher Baba, although I strongly disagree with anyone claiming to be God in personhood, because we all have that little bit of God in us. If we all start saying that, we're all going to think we're God, which we are not. My point with that is, all right, he said he was God. I don't agree with that. However, removed from that, he would describe metaphysics from the first-person perspective of our Creator. That's the point I'm trying to make. His belief system, the metaphysics of the universe, reincarnation, progressive revelation, these are all theological concepts that I believe are of great importance. He put them forth in his writing, and he also felt that people could glean his writings and remain strong in their faith tradition. You can be a Christian and read Meher Baba's writings. You can be a Zoroastrian, a Jew, a Muslim, a Hindu, a Sikh, a Buddhist, a Jain, and read the works of Meher Baba, and you will not find anything in strong contradiction to the core essence of the belief. Maybe you don't believe in reincarnation. Maybe you don't believe in different planes of existence. Maybe you only believe in heaven and a hell.
aside from that, you do still have a theology and a philosophy that any religionist could follow. I wrote about Mayor Baba's influence on the Tommy album because it's my favorite album, and also because of the all-important subtext beneath the record. And it's important to note, this was Pete Townsend actively witnessing to hippies, trying to lead them to a state of God consciousness. The only person I can think of who was also doing that in the secular music world, not even at that time, but a couple of years later, was George Harrison. And George Harrison's connection was not to Meher Baba, but to the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, an organization that I feel, to some degree, has been compromised, but in its time was worth its weight in not gold, in truth. That said, even today, Swami Prabhupada has had 500 million books published that he has authored, and I will also maintain the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has done more for globally for addicts and for the homeless and for runaway youth than any other state organization or nonprofit. I speak from direct witness. I speak from testimonies shared with me. ISKCON is one of the best organizations to get people off drugs, off of the streets. So there I am stumping for ISKCON. Yeah, I hope that book comes out soon, so I could maybe read it on camera, and no one would have to pay $60 for a book that like 20 copies are going to sell. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about Hendrix and Indian art. So he wanted a Cherokee type thing. He had Cherokee ancestry, but say Indian to a Brit, and this is what you'll get. Now, I did not know as a kid what I was looking at, other than knowing that it was meant to look like art from India. And I later learned that Hindus have a god figure bearing the likeness of an elephant. So I eventually came to learn who all these different figures were. And of course there's Sri Krishna and our beloved Arjuna. That multi-headed god is a visage called the Vishvarupa. And the Vishvarupa is a central feature of chapters 10 and 11 in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is on the battlefield. Krishna is preaching to him about the nature of yoga, paths to God, paths to salvation. And Arjuna finally says, if you truly are the Supreme Lord, reveal to me your multifaceted form. And Krishna says, are you ready? I don't think you're ready. And he's like, oh, no, I'm ready. I'm ready. You've spoken truth to me, but the one thing that will sort of remove my doubt is to see your true form. The idea that this is what emerges, the Vishvarupa, this embodiment of the Lord in all of its many, many forms. Humanoid, not so. There's Sri Jaya Ganesha. There's Hanuman. There's Narsimha. Other deities are marked here, and some of them bear tiliks of Vaishnavites, and others bear tiliks of Shaivites. Despite them screwing up Hendrix's work order, theologically this is pretty consistent with what's seen in the Vishvarupa. These many mouths are shown consuming the warriors on the battlefield, where Arjuna is getting this lesson from Sri Krishna. And Arjuna is so overpowered by the visage of the Vishvarupa that he says, enough's enough, I can't handle this. And Krishna says, all right, well, you're the only mortal who's ever seen it. Consider yourself blessed. Most other people don't get that privilege. They just have to take it on faith that I am who I say I am. Or words to that effect. I'm a bit rusty. I share all of this with you, not to just be like, hey, look at my dad's cool record collection. Though that is part of it. I love Cream. I love Cheap Trick. This is the music I grew up listening to. It laid a foundation for my later musical excursions and discoveries. And as you can see, there's more than meets the ear with some of these records. And I don't think this is a coincidence, you know? That these seemingly mundane packages contain so much richness and depth. And you can gain that from it as well. Now, is there theological insight on this record itself? You better believe it. There's a theology to Jimi Hendrix. There's a politic to Jimi Hendrix too. Go listen to House Burning Down and tell me that guy was not part of the Black Power movement. Go tell me he didn't share the ideology of the Black Panthers. Anyway, it's been a long week, and being in a home that contains so much of my father's energy, it's been overwhelming at times. And I'm 100% at peace that he's no longer in pain. But I'm always going to miss him. I will always wish he was around to answer a music question, a philosophy question, a life question, and someday, when I've got little dumplings running around, somewhat bearing my resemblance, I'm going to have some dad questions. And that's for me to figure out and put together, perhaps with help. But the point of all that is to say that this has been a big turning point in my life. His sickness was fast. Some folks have cancer for a decade and a half. Some are given a very short time. My father was given a very short time. He almost died in November. I was 2 phone calls away from having to get here to potentially be at his bedside in November. Luckily, the complications went away and he pulled through. But it was like a yo-yo, and it was horrible. And throughout his sickness, I woke up to these updates detailing the excruciating amount of pain he was in, the ungodly amount of chemicals they were pumping into him at every corner, and at a few points along the way, dealing with some straight up bullshit from the insurance companies. We need Medicare for all. So, it's been a strange week. A lot of memories. Nearly 100% good. My dad was such a good man. A good Christian man. Now, I like Jesus. I like him a lot. I think St. Paul butchered the gospel, and I think a lot of his followers woefully misinterpret what's printed in red ink in most editions of the Bible. And so because of that, I can't call myself a Christian, though I do believe Jesus Christ was a manifestation of the Lord's energy, and that he was a true holy man. But I'm here to say that, I guess, 90 minutes after hitting the record button here, this week has given me a chance to take pause and ponder priorities and life goals. I am publicly out there as a reverend, as a minister, and I'd like to make myself more available on that front. I don't know if I'll ever run a congregation, and I don't think I would want to. But I really like talking to people one-on-one about our shared earthly creator. And I learned that my dad witnessed to people. He wasn't an evangelist. He didn't go around talking to people and telling them they needed to stop what they were doing and follow his way. People would ask him what his secret to happiness was. People would bring their problems to him, and he would talk to them about God. It was shared to me by my grandmother. Tragically, both of my dad's parents outlived him. But my grandmother shared to me that she learned from my dad's pastor, Reverend Jeremy, that my dad personally brought dozens of people to the Lord. People who were having crises of faith, people with addiction problems, people with life issues. He brought to the Lord. In that sense, he was like an unfrocked minister, as George Harrison would say, a plainclothes devotee. So I think I have to make this part of my life mission, to continue sharing the greatness and goodness of our Creator with people who might not be convinced that they exist. And yeah, it started with my dad taking me to church and stuff, but also even the worldly things he left behind. There are messages of great importance, and I think I'm getting a little aimless at this point. It's been 92 minutes. This basically has been a movie. But what a week. What a week. I'm going to keep live streaming on a more frequent basis. I think talking about my father's passing will be helpful for me. And I also think it might be helpful for people who have a sick relative, have their own questions or thoughts about death, where we go after that major life event where life ends. And to share what's getting me through this, because it's hard. It's really fucking hard. The secret is knowing with full confidence that I will see my father again, and that where he is now, he is free of the pain and suffering that marked the last 6 months of his existence. I got to eulogize him at his funeral, something that 5.5 months ago I told him would be effortless for me. When it was made very obvious that my dad's condition was serious, and I mean brain, lung, lymphatic system, stage 4, you don't have to have much of a working knowledge of cancer to understand the seriousness of such a prognosis. And as soon as that was made known to me, I talked to my dad and we had a heart-to-heart about end-of-life stuff. I told him in no unequivocal terms was he a great father. He was amazing. He taught me right from wrong. He taught me to be kind to people from all walks of life, both instructing and also by living by example like he did. He was kind to old ladies. He was kind to children. He was great with babies. He had friends of all colors. Most of his friends in high school did not match his skin color, something that I didn't learn until very recently. Being an Air Force brat, you don't have a steady, consistent friend group, so he could be kind of an introvert from time to time, kind of a loner, but when he was comfortable, when he was in his element, which in the right company, it was a guarantee, and I was one of those people. When he opened up, he was the most big-hearted, open-minded, good-humored, good-natured humans in the world. My last visit with him, during Christmas, we stayed up late, probably against doctor's orders. but we were making up for lost time. I moved away from here in 2009, and I haven't spent more than 2 weeks here at a go since. And I've been all over the place. Been houseless, traveled through 48 states, been in some dangerous situations, suffered a major injury, had some stuff happen. Him too. He had a bad couple of years, these last few. But we'd stay up late and we would talk about music. I would play him new stuff. I would play him favorites. We would talk about our beloved favorites. We'd talk about guitars. We would talk about playing music. But my favorite thing to talk about with my dad, more so than music, was to talk about God. He was a very open-minded man, certainly for a Christian. He believed Jesus Christ is a way, not the way, not the exclusive way. He doesn't think Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jews, any non-Christian, he doesn't think they're going to hell. He actually believes that there's going to be a lot of Christians who will be shocked to find themselves in hell. And a lot of atheists who will be shocked to find themselves in the kingdom of heaven. He believed that people were judged based on their deeds, not their creeds. And I believe that too. Eulogizing him, I talked about the role he played in this community. It's a town of about 18,000 people. He was my Sunday school teacher, my Boy Scout leader, soccer coach. In my adult life, a mentor, a spiritual counsel, a friend. And I talked about his godliness. I talked about his wisdom, his knowledge, his humor. And I was pleased to quote scripture. The blessed Lord said, while speaking learned words, you are grieving for that which is not worthy of grief. The wise grieve not for the living nor for the dead. Never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor these kings among us, nor will there be a time that any of us shall cease to be. As the embodied soul continually passes from youth to childhood, from childhood to youth, to adulthood to old age, so also does the soul pass into another body at the time of death. This does not confound a steadfast person. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verses 11 through 13. I didn't advertise what book I was reading from in a Baptist church, but I do believe Krishna and Christ are one and the same. Also, my dad agreed with that, and he gave me my first copy of the Bhagavad Gita. I was so happy to read that beloved quote. A quote that got me through some depression, a quote that helped me overcome my fear of death, a quote that helped me understand that yes, there is a God, and to understand the nature of rebirth. I was so blessed to share that scripture with my father's community. It's been a long video, and I do apologize for the length, about to hit the 100-minute mark, right as the low battery thing pops up. Now is as good a time as any to start winding down. 100 minutes, this is as long as a film. Besides, I've got a long evening of Monty Python's Flying Circus ahead of me. To those of you watching, all one of you, and to anyone who may come to this video at a later date, if you're having a crisis of faith, what I encourage you to do is to sit and ponder nature. Minus the intervention of humankind, and by that I mean this thing called civilization and this other thing called industry. Take that out of the equation and examine the natural world. Start small. Look at the relationship between the grass in your yard and the insects that live among it. the ecosystem in your backyard. Start there. Look at the harmony. Look at the balance. Tell me that wasn't intentional. Tell me that that's just the result of some great big cosmic chemical spill. And I'll call you a fool. Start with your backyard, and then, like in a movie, zoom out that lens. Maybe study the emergence of human civilization. Understand that to be a manifestation of God's will. Look at the tides. Look at the fact that the sphere we inhabit and the satellite that orbits it exist in a symbiotic relationship, where the moon is capable of affecting our tides, and that also is capable of impacting our moods. The gravitational pull of a celestial body causes the elements and the energies in our bodies to get disrupted. That's why when there's a full moon, some people go absolutely crackers. And that's why when there's a big, beautiful moon in the sky, some people go absolutely mad. Why is that? I don't know. We'll figure that out another time. But I just want to say right now, there is a God. There is a God. And if you have any doubt about it, let's talk. You will not convince me otherwise. If you're seeking an argument, I'm not the one to speak with. If you're seeking proof, if you're seeking a rational explanation that will bring you to a point of peace, I'm your guy. I watched my father die. I watched him take his last breath. I saw his body go empty. The instant he died, the room became chilly. And I mean like cold. Couldn't see my breath. It didn't look like a scene out of The Exorcist. But the room went from warm, comfortably warm, like I could sit there in a t-shirt, to I needed to bundle up and put my hoodie up. When his body became an empty vessel, when his soul exited, the house got so cold. There is water running. It has stopped. Creepy old house. Alright, I'm starting to ramble now. Let me end this video then with a prayer. A prayer. A benediction prayer. And, bear with me. I'm already seated in something close to the lotus position. Cross-legged on the floor of a very, very, very cold basement. Sometimes I'll cover my head when I pray if I feel like I should. This is one of those times. You don't have to. If you want, again, I've got one viewer. If you want, close your eyes, bow your head, do your thing, put your forehead to the ground, sit and just stare at me. I don't care. Lord, I thank you for giving me the Father, the earthly Father that I had in this lifetime. He laid the foundation for a spiritual belief that is strong, unwavering. And I thank you for the living example that he was and will continue to be as a good man, as what a godly man looks like, as once living proof of what a good Christian is capable of being, for representing true followers of Jesus Christ whose theology centers around understanding, peace, acceptance, and love. Not bigotry, not exclusion, not saying who does and doesn't get into heaven or hell, but in acceptance and peace, offered with no judgment. My dad had some human struggles, and through those human struggles, he became a living example of self-improvement, forgiveness, redemption, and understanding that it's okay to be vulnerable. I thank you for giving me the family I have, who loves and misses Eric as much as I do. Thank you for giving me a father whose footprints he left on the world around him, whether the trail he left on someone's heart was short, long, or somewhere in between, the footprints remain deep wherever he went. In a dark world, he truly was a lighthouse. May his spirit live on through his children, through his children's children, and through anyone whose life he touched. Sairam. Amen. All right. Praying on a live stream. If I was ever not concerned about being made fun of for being a leftist with deep-seated spiritual views, I'd say that time is now. This has been a transformative experience for me, and I unfortunately haven't quite been able to process in the way I would like to while here. I don't want to talk about why. That's nobody's business. Maybe some other time. But I know when I get back to the place that I currently call home, my real processing will begin. Going back to my mundane life, going back to my day-to-day, knowing that in this life, I will not see the living form of my Father again in the flesh. Who knows? I remain optimistic for my future. This has not shaken my faith. This has not sunk me into a depressive state, which I kind of thought it would. I've had momentary depression, but I think that's got more to do with being here than it does with reeling from my father's passing. Anyway, time to wind down. Thanks for tuning in. I had one watcher the whole time. I really hope that that's not just like me watching myself. It'll be goofy. To those of you who did watch, all one of you, thank you. Seems like you tuned in and just stayed tuned in this whole time. Alright, I'm gonna log off. My next video will be from Portland. And I think we're going to continue this discussion and some others. Tonight, say a prayer, a meditation, light a candle, burn some incense for Eric John de Blasi Sr., August 17th, 1956 to February 24th, 2019. He did more in 62 years than some people do in 100. God bless you all, even if you don't believe in that entity.